He sold hope for pennies, turned lies into millions, and walked away almost untouched. This is the story of Marcus Haleth, a man who gamified greed and taught the world how easy it is to believe a confident voice. Detroit, 1978. A city of closed factories, tired dreams, and fathers who came home smelling like oil and regret. Marcus Hall grew up watching ambition rust. He promised himself one thing early on. He would never wait for permission. At 12, he wasn't playing baseball with the other kids. He was flipping counterfeit concert tickets outside stadiums, his voice cutting through the noise. "Front row," he'd say with a grin. "Last ones." They weren't real, of course, but his confidence was. By 16, he understood something most adults never learn. People don't buy truth. They buy certainty. College lasted exactly one semester. On the first day of his economics class, the professor droned on, saying, "Markets reward patience." Marcus stood up, smiled at the room, and walked right out. Patience was for people who weren't hungry enough. His first real business was tech repair. He'd buy old computers and cheap parts, but he sold big promises. He wasn't really fixing machines. He was selling futures. He'd tell a customer, "Your system will run twice as fast." It never did, but they believed it would at least, long enough for him to collect his money and move on. When that business eventually collapsed, Marcus wasn't angry. He was relieved, because failure taught him the final, most important rule of his game. The product is irrelevant. The story is everything. And so, he turned his sights to Wall Street. Not the gleaming marble floors and prestigious firms, the back doors. He landed at a third-tier brokerage in New Jersey, a place where the phones screamed louder than anyone's morals. That's where Marcus discovered microcap stocks. These were tiny, unknown companies with no oversight, but they offered massive commissions. $1 shares with 50% cuts. It was the same pitch as the concert tickets and the broken computers, just with a much bigger reward. He mastered the art of the cold call. He'd get someone on the line and say, "Mr. Anderson, I wouldn't be calling if this wasn't time sensitive." Then he'd pause, letting the silence hang in the air, creating a vacuum of suspense that only he could fill. "This isn't public yet," he'd whisper, "but it will be." And just like that, another person's life savings were converted into his commission. By 30, Marcus had built his own empire, Atlas Ridge Capital. The name sounded ancient, respectable. The office was neither. It was a cheap space in a strip mall, lit by humming fluorescent lights, with energy drinks stacked like trophies. His employees weren't MBAs from top schools. They were desperate. He hired former athletes, fired salesmen, and college dropouts, who all had something to prove. He trained them relentlessly, with 2 simple rules. First, never leave a moment of silence unfilled. Second, doubt as weakness, crush it early. They weren't selling stocks. They were selling urgency. Their targets were retirees, divorced parents, and veterans, people who desperately needed a miracle. Marcus gave them deadlines and fake insider tips. The stocks would spike as his team drove up the price. Atlas Ridge would sell everything at the top, and the investors would be left with nothing as the stock collapsed back to zero. Inside the firm, the money turned into pure noise. Bonuses were thrown around like poker chips. Luxury watches were handed out as incentives. Drugs became the fuel to keep the machine running. Then a necessity. Marcus bought all the symbols of success he'd ever dreamed of. The penthouse apartment, the supercar, the yacht with a name he changed every year, just because he could. He preached a gospel of winning at all costs. If you hesitate, you lose, he'd tell his team. And if you lose, you're nothing. But any system built on lies will eventually start to decay. First, it was quiet. A few complaints to regulators. Then came the subpoenas. Then, a different kind of silence, the dangerous kind. An analyst from the firm vanished overnight. A partner started asking too many questions. Someone, somewhere, was wearing a wire. But Marcus didn't panic. He adapted. He moved money offshore, creating accounts and names that didn't exist. He converted cash into art and hid the art in storage units. He thought he was untouchable until the morning the doors to Atlas Ridge didn't open. Federal agents had arrived before sunrise. The phones were dead, the computers frozen. The entire illusion collapsed in real time. Marcus tried to make one last move, a desperate wire transfer. It was recorded. Game over. Facing decades behind bars, he did what he always did best. He sold, not stocks this time, but people. He cooperated with the authorities, delivered names, and performed his remorse like it was a closing argument in a trial he was determined to win. His sentence: 18 months in a minimum security prison. Inside, he wrote, not apologies, but a narrative. He crafted a story where his excess looked glamorous and his guilt seemed optional. His book became a best. Then came the movie deal. Then came the applause. Marcus Halle didn't disappear after prison. Rebranding. Today, he's a keynote speaker, a mindset coach, a reformed visionary who stands on stages teaching discipline, ethics, and the secrets to success. The victims of his schemes never got stages. They got silence, shame, and financial ruin. And that brings us to the most uncomfortable truth of this entire story. Marcus didn't beat the system. He just understood it better than anyone else. Because in a world that worships confidence, the loudest voice doesn't need to be right. It just needs to be believed. Thanks for watching! If you found this story fascinating, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the figures who shape our world, for better or for worse.